So a big warm welcome to my 2025 Directed Writing Crammers edition. Now I could remind you that cramming isn't always the best idea, but let's be real, you're going to do it anyway, so I'm hopefully here to make your last minute prep for FLE Paper 2 a little bit more purposeful and, dare I say it, actually helpful. Now, of course, the exam is next week, which means if you start now, like right now, you're still in a good position or good shape, so do not worry. Right, directed writing, and in my opinion, this is by far the trickiest question across both papers. It asks an awful lot from you in terms of skills, so do buckle up, do grab a notebook and pen, and let's dive in. Right, for any of this to make sense, of course, you'll need to download the exam resources for paper 2 that I'll be going through. And for your convenience, yes, I'm that nice, I have linked these in the description box below. It is from the May-June 2024 series, and it is the 0500/21 paper. So the basics, or the nuts and bolts, let's break this down. So you've got an hour, of course, for this question before swiftly moving on to the composition section. And honestly, it's worth taking 5 to 10 minutes to plan properly. And trust me, it will save you from going off track later. Now, you'll need to write in one of 3 non-fiction formats. So an article, a letter, or a speech. So just make sure that you follow the tone and structure of the one they asked for. More on that later. And your job is essentially to take ideas from both texts, but don't just copy chunks, if that makes sense. You have to blend them into your own voice, or assimilate the ideas from the text into your own voice, pick the most relevant parts or points, and make them work for your angle. Now, for the first bullet, you are evaluating the ideas in the text, and this essentially means that you are picking out what they are saying, thinking about how convincing or how flawed those ideas are, and giving your own take. Now, the second bullet is all about inference. You are suggesting solutions or outcomes based on what the text hints at, not just at what is directly stated. So with this question, you are using both explicit and implicit reading skills, spotting, I guess, what's obvious and digging a bit deeper to read between the lines. And that's where the higher marks really are. Okay, so let's talk about structure, because if you've got a solid plan, the writing does become way less stressful. You are going to start with a short intro where appropriate, just 1 paragraph, guys, to set the tone, show your voice, and briefly hint at what's coming. No need to, of course, overdo it. Then comes your first big section, which is where most of your evaluation happens. You'll write 2 paragraphs here, 1 for the ideas from text A and 1 for text B. And I get my students to aim for 3 ideas in each, and don't just explain them, respond to them. This is where that sort of positive negative solution structure really helps, and again, more on that later. Now, after that, you've got 1 paragraph, which is, I guess, in many ways inference-based thinking, your own ideas, your take on what could or should happen next based on what the text essentially suggests. And finally, you want to wrap it all up with a short conclusion, again, where appropriate. Keep it purposeful, no waffle, just a strong final point to leave the examiner with. Oh, and the contentious issue, I feel like I have to address the word count on almost every video. You write for 1 hour. Now, for some of you, that will mean writing 1.5 pages, hopefully at least. For others, you'll write 2 pages plus. It is suggested, and actually with this question, it's probably a good idea to go over, providing your focus, so you can aim to evaluate a range of ideas successfully. Okay, so for the rest of this video, guys, I'm going to break down the directed writing question step by step. No stress, no drama, no memes, no dad jokes, I promise. Maybe 1 or 2. We are going to go through the structure, the skills you need, how to plan it, and how to actually write it. All in a way that hopefully makes sense and hopefully doesn't make your brain melt. So if you've got paper, do grab it. If not, pause and come back. Follow along with me. We'll plan it together. We'll break down the text, and I'll show you exactly how to turn your ideas into a strong, confident response. So let's try together to make this as manageable as it can, maybe even slightly enjoyable, who knows? Step one, guys, you know it. First things first, read the question properly. I know, it sounds obvious, but trust me, this is where people slip up. You need to know exactly what the task is asking you to do, what format you are writing in, and who is your audience. Don't skim it, actually read it carefully. And it's, of course, is going to set the tone for your entire response. So let's do exactly that and read the question together. So question one, write an article for young people about food waste and what they can do about it. In your article, you should evaluate the ideas, attitudes, and opinions given in both texts, suggest how young people can help to reduce food waste in their homes, schools, and the wider world. Base your article on what you have read in both texts, but be careful to use your own words. Address both of the bullet points. Write about 250 to 350 words. I think you need to write more than that. And of course, up to 15 marks are available for the content of your answer and up to 25 marks for the quality of your writing. Whew, that's a lot of marks. Now, step two, once you've read the question, lock in the TAP. That's text type, audience, and purpose. Are you writing an article, a speech, or a letter? Who are you talking to? Young people, adults, the general public? And what's the point of the piece? To persuade, to evaluate, suggest. If you get this right, everything else hopefully will fall into place. Write like you know who you are speaking to. So as you can see, I've worked out the TAP already. The text type will always be clearly stated, but it's still important to think about the the generic features. For example, if it's an article like this question, you'll want a catchy title and maybe some subheadings to help the reader navigate the page. Now, the audience is clearly stated here, young people, which is always a bonus because it gives you, in many ways anyway, freedom to be a bit more playful and creative with your language. And dare I say it, you can even maybe break a few writing rules within reason, of course. Now, from bullet point one, there's no escaping the word evaluate, and that is key. That never changes. And it's really what separates this task from, question 3 on paper 1. Now, bullet point 2 is usually about suggesting solutions. And whilst the task might not directly say persuade, let's be real. If it's asking you to talk about food waste and what young people can do about it, there's definitely going to be an element of persuasion. You want to get your audience thinking and ideally doing something, a call for action. So once you've done all of that, it's step 3, and of course it's time to read text A. Now, don't just read it like a story. You want to look out for the writer's ideas, their tone, and any opinions they are trying to sneak in. You might want to underline anything that stands out, facts, examples, or lines that make you think, that's a bit of a claim, that's a bit of a stretch. Now, remember, you'll need to evaluate this later. So start thinking about what you, agree with, what you don't, and what you could build on. Have your highlighters poised. You might just want to read it once and then do the highlighting the next step. So let's take a read of text A together. So the following passage is an article about food waste. Food waste, which allows a third of the food supply across the globe to rot and is a major contributor to climate change, seems like it should be easy to address. Waste less food, advocates cry, and then you can save money, you can save time, you can save farmland and fuel, and since agriculture drives habitat loss, you can even help save the tiger. In some countries, up to 80% of food waste is attributed to ordinary households. So why is this problem so hard to solve? Because researchers say we're only human and have busy lives that don't always align with the moment the fruit in the kitchen ripens. There are often confusing labels on packaging. Facts. So people throw away food that might be past its best, but is still perfectly safe to eat. In the US, there are efforts to cultivate individual awareness, but surveys in several cities found that most people think they throw away less food than the average American. Clearly that doesn't add up and shows no one wants to see themselves as part of the problem. Hotels are also notorious wasters, favouring towers of bread or heaps of fruit that look inviting but are rarely consumed. When food shopping, it can be easy to imagine a week of healthy, social media worthy meals of colourful salads and inspiring feasts, but life often gets in the way. There are restaurant outings, spontaneous invitations, late nights at work, not feeling like cooking after a day at work or college, and who's got time to shop for fresh food every day to make sure nothing is wasted? When it comes to mitigating climate change, only switching to wind power has more impact than reducing food waste. So whilst we can't all instill wind turbines on our lunch breaks, we can make tweaks to our lunches and our lives to minimise waste. So after reading text A, you want to pause and think, okay, what is this actually about? What are we dealing with here? And in a nutshell, it's highlighting how huge the problem of food waste is globally and personally. And it opens with some pretty shocking stats and basically says, look, wasting food isn't just bad for your bank account, it's wrecking the planet too. So there's certainly a lot we can evaluate there. It then points out that whilst people say they care, most of us still waste food for very human reasons. We're busy, we get confused by labels, and sometimes our lives just don't match up with that shelf life of a blinking banana. The text also calls out hotels and households, showing that waste isn't just about individuals being careless, it's built into systems and habits. And by the end, it makes a strong case that reducing food waste could actually have more environmental impact than most of the big fixes we always hear about. So it's pretty powerful stuff. Now, step 4 is, of course, reading text B. So let's read it together. So, text B, the following passage is part of a blog by a university student. Have you ever noticed that young people just can't win? In my country, people between the ages of 18 and 24 are apparently the biggest food wasters. We're made to feel guilty for the effect this has on world hunger, as well as for the environmental resources it takes to grow food that's never consumed. We're told we shouldn't buy junk food or packaged food that uses unnecessary plastic, but some of that food lasts longer when packaged and is less likely to be wasted. We are told we should eat more sustainably, cut down on processed snacks and learn to cook. We must also be sure never to waste that last unappetizing banana or that bit of cheese that's gone hard in the fridge. Young people just don't live like that. Fruit and vegetables are cited as the most wasted food items, but apart from the occasional apple, my college friends live on fast food picked up hurriedly between classes, studying and socializing. So who's wasting all those vegetables? Another thing that irritates me is that whilst ordinary consumers get the blame for wasting food, a third of the food grown never even finds its way into our cupboards. Storing food between farm and plate is a problem in some climates, as is extreme weather or a shortage of workers to harvest crops. And in the rich world, consumers' fixation with beautifully unblemished, standard-shaped food means that tons of decent food are thrown away. Personally, I wouldn't mind buying fruit that isn't absolutely perfect, but you have to look hard for it on the bargain shelves of supermarkets here. Restaurants, school and workplace canteens, as well as supermarkets, waste a lot of food, and although there are some projects that offer leftover food to people in need, retailers are reluctant to give away their profits, and there's sometimes a stigma attached to such recycling schemes. Some establishments in my own town offer boxes to take away any food you can't eat, but I often just end up wasting it later. I'm sure I could shop more often and waste less, but it's just not an easy adjustment to make, is it? And I don't need any more awareness campaigns because we young people know a lot about the problems the world faces, but we're not the only ones to blame for them or the only ones who need to find the solutions. Alright, so what's going on in text be? Well, this one is written as a blog by a uni student, and straight away we can really feel that frustration. It really is palpable. Now, the writer is basically saying, why are we always the ones getting blamed for food waste? They point out that young people get guilt tripped from all angles. We are told off for buying packaged food, for not cooking enough, for not eating that sad banana at the back of the fridge. I'm sure we can all relate. But the reality is that most of us are just grabbing quick food between classes and trying to get through the day. Now, there's also a bigger point here. Loads of food is wasted before it even gets to young people. Stuff gets binned for being the wrong shape or never harvested at all, and supermarkets only want perfect looking fruit. So yeah, young people waste food sometimes, but they are not the only ones causing the problem. And by the end, the tone's pretty clear. Stop blaming young people. Stop with the constant awareness campaigns. We're not that ignorant. And maybe start fixing the actual systems that waste food on a much bigger scale. So for step 5, you want to be making some quick annotations. Nothing fancy, just jot down the main idea behind a sentence or a brief evaluative comment. Now, you might write something like blames young people, unfair with a question mark, or label confusion, understandable but wasteful. Now, these are short and to the point, just enough to remind you what's going on and how you might respond to it later. The goal here isn't to overdo it or spend too much time during the planning phase. It's to give yourself a head start when you are ready to write your response. So what you are looking at now are my annotations. I won't go through them one by one, but feel free to pause the video if you want to take a closer look or compare them with your own. So step 6, the stressful or exciting step. Now it's time to write. You've got your ideas, guys. You've done the thinking and the planning's hopefully sorted. Now it's about bringing it all together. So I'll walk you through it step by step so you can see exactly how I have built my response. But I think what I'll do, I'll read the whole response and then we'll dissect each paragraph. Waste not, want not. Why food waste isn't just your problem. You've probably heard it before. Stop wasting food. But let's take off the rose-tinted glasses for a minute. Life can be chaotic, and sometimes it feels like you're spinning 100 plates all at once, just hoping they don't all come crashing down. So, did that somber-looking bag of salad crammed at the back of your fridge really ever stand a chance? I don't think so. But hold up. This article isn't to shame you. It's here to break down why food waste actually matters and how young people like us can do something about it without giving up our midnight cravings. So I wouldn't turn the page if I were you. So what's the big deal? Let's be real, most of us don't waste food on purpose. Between school, homework and just trying to stay upright, we don't always have time or energy to plan every meal like we are vying for a spot on MasterChef. And fair enough, life gets busy and food waste isn't always top of the to-do list. However, in the same breath, using busy as a permanent excuse doesn't actually fix anything. If you can plan your next snack run, you could probably figure out how to not waste what's already in the fridge. Even one extra planned meal a week or remembering to eat what you've already got makes a difference. Then there's the label problem. Best before, use by, eat soon. Who actually understands these? It's not about people being careless, it's confusion. But instead of clearer guidance, we just keep chucking food just in case. This could be solved easily. Teach us what the labels mean properly, or give us the tools that actually help. Not just tell us to be more aware, and let's not pretend it's all our fault. Hotels, school canteens, event buffets waste mountains of food every day. More for show than need. When waste becomes normal, no one questions it, and that's exactly the problem. Let's talk blame. So apparently young people are the worst for wasting food, but let's be honest, most of us aren't throwing out home-cooked feast. We're scraping together snacks, microwaving whatever's quick, and hoping there's still milk left. Blaming teens feels like it's an easy headline, not the full story. That said, we are not off the hook. The convenience of plastic wrapped everything means we often choose what lasts over what's fresh, and it adds up. Plastic helps, but for long term, it's not a great fix. We need better packaging and smarter options, not just more of the same. And the biggest problem, a huge chunk of food is wasted before we even see it. Perfectly good fruit and veg gets thrown out for being the wrong shape or never picked at all. That doesn't mean we should give up. It means we should do more. Buy the wonky veg. Support places that don't care if your carrot looks slightly unhinged. It's food. Eat it. What can you actually do? Start at home. Label your leftovers. Freeze the stuff you always forget about. Stop throwing out food because it looks a little bit weird. At school, suggest smaller portions in the canteen or a box where people can leave food they haven't touched. Talk to someone about donating what's not eaten. Chances are no one's asked. And out there in the real world, support stores that sell imperfect produce. Use a food sharing app. Volunteer if you've got time. No one's asking you to solve the entire system. Just do something. Even one small change is better than none. That's it. No guilt trip. Just a bit of honesty. Some straight up advice. And a reminder that food doesn't belong in the bin. Now, who's feeling hungry? So let's go back to each paragraph from my model response and evaluate them and unpick them. So of course, what you're looking at now is my introduction. And let's be honest, the goal here is to grab attention straight away. I'm writing for young people, so the tone is fairly relaxed. It's a little bit playful. It's a little bit cheeky. That line about that somber looking bag of salad, it's something most of us, I'm sure, can relate to. I've made sure to speak directly to the reader using suitable pronouns, you and us, and of course they build a connection. And I've thrown in a little bit of humour to keep things light. But at the same time, I'm already setting up the purpose. This isn't just a rant, it's about why food waste matters and what we can do as a collective to change it. And that last line, so I wouldn't turn the page if I were you, is just a playful way of saying, stick with me, this is going somewhere. You're going to learn something if you stick with me. So my first main body paragraph focuses on 3 key ideas from text A. So we're focusing on bullet point 1 here, guys. And here's where I start doing that evaluation stuff the question is asking for. Now, first I pick up on the point that people waste food because they are busy, and I don't just repeat it, I show that, yeah, it's relatable, but it can also become an excuse. And that's the positive negative balance I was talking about earlier. And then I move on to the whole label confusion thing, which quite frankly confuses me. The best before, used by, who even knows the difference? I keep it in my own voice, but make it clear that this confusion leads to unnecessary waste. Again, I don't just leave it hanging, I suggest a fix or a solution. That's really important, guys, for, I guess, a balanced evaluation. And finally, I bring in the point about institutional waste, how hotels and canteens pile on the food for show. Now this one I keep a bit sharper in tone because I want to show that it's not just individuals who are part of the problem, it's the system too. And all through this paragraph I'm blending ideas from the text into my own style, my own voice. There's no quoting, there's no awkward text A says this, text B says this, which some teachers teach. I don't teach it that way, but hey, horses for courses and all that. It's just picking out the key points and responding to them. Okay, so bullet point 1, now looking at text B. So my subheading here, let's talk blame, that imperative there, really short, really catchy, sets the tone straight away. Of course, I'm shifting the focus to text B, and I want it to feel like, I guess in many ways, a bit of a reality check. Now, the first idea I tackle is the claim that young people are the worst for wasting food. And again, instead of just repeating it, I challenge it. I talk about how most of us young people aren't throwing away roast dinners. We are grabbing snacks and just trying to get through the day. That's me pushing back on the stereotype whilst trying to keep it real and I guess relatable. Then I go into the point about packaging. I do acknowledge that plastic helps food last longer. That's my, I guess, positive evaluation, but I also explain why it's not a long-term fix. And I keep that balance and move straight into suggesting we need better, smarter solutions. Now, finally, I bring in the most shocking idea from the blog, the fact that loads of food is wasted before we even see it. And again, I don't just state it, I respond to it. I say we shouldn't give up just because the system is broken. Instead, we should support shops that sell imperfect produce and rethink how we see food. So again, it's not just a summary, it's me evaluating the points, showing a mix of agreement, challenge and solutions, all in, I guess, an authentic voice. So guys, this last paragraph tackles bullet point 2, where you are asked to suggest what people, especially young people, can actually do about food waste. Now the subheading, what can you actually do, keeps the tone practical and direct. I break it into chunks, starting with simple things at home like labelling leftovers or freezing food before it goes bad. Nothing fancy, just stuff people can actually manage. Then I move into school-based ideas as per the question, smaller portions in the canteen, food share boxes, even asking if uneaten food can be donated. These aren't taken straight from the text, but they are based on the ideas and problems raised, so it's inference-based and personal. And finally, I zoom out to the wider world, food sharing apps, supporting stores that sell the quote-unquote ugly fruit, maybe even volunteering. And I guess the key is that I'm not trying to save the planet in one paragraph. I'm just showing that doing something is better than nothing. And I close it off in my voice, a bit of humor, a nudge towards action, and a final reminder that food doesn't belong in the bin. So let's break down the model in even more detail. As you can see, guys, I've added a color code at the top to break things down. Yellow shows the idea from the text, green is the positive evaluation, blue is the negative, and pink highlights the solution. You don't need all of these things for every single idea. It really depends on the idea that you've identified and your own stance on it. Now, I'd really recommend pausing the video whenever you need to, so you can take a closer look, use it to see how I've assimilated ideas from the text into my own words, and how ultimately I've evaluated them, balanced different viewpoints, and offered practical solutions, all in my own voice. And if it's still not clear, guys, here's a breakdown of how I've handled one of the ideas from text A. Now, on the left, you've got the original quote or idea, and in the middle is how I've assimilated it, meaning I've put it into my own words or thoughts, and I've kept my own tone. And then on the right, I've evaluated it. You'll notice I've done three things. First, I've acknowledged the idea, like, yeah, life is busy, that's the positive. Then I push back a little and say, well, using that as an excuse isn't helping, and that's the negative. And finally, I suggest something practical, like planning one extra meal a week, which is my solution. And of course, emojis are just there to help you spot each type quickly, so feel free to pause and copy the structure when you are practicing your own response. So here is my second example from text A. This time it's about confusing food labels. You can see from the original quote on the left, it's pointing out that people often throw food away just because they're not sure if it's still safe to eat. And in the middle, I've assimilated it, made it sound more like me, with a bit of humor, of course, and a rhetorical question. Then over in the evaluation column, I've broken it down again. First, I acknowledge that the confusion is understandable, that's the positive. Then I push back a little, just saying be more aware isn't enough if no one actually knows what the labels mean. That's the quote unquote negative. And finally, I suggest something useful. Teach us or give us the tools that actually help. And of course, that's the solution. Again, feel free to pause if you want to take notes or copy the structure into your own plan or writing. And here is the third idea from text A, all about institutional waste. Places like hotels, canteens and buffets piling up way more food than anyone's actually going to eat. Now in my version, I've broadened it out. I mentioned schools and events too, but the idea is the same. This kind of waste is more about appearances than actual need. Now, for the positive, I highlight that it's helpful to recognize the problem isn't just on us as young people, as individuals, and that's important. And then I go further with the negative, pointing out how dangerous it is when this kind of waste becomes normal and stops being questioned. And the solution, well, it's implied but clear. We have to challenge it. If we keep ignoring it, nothing changes. So now we're moving on to text B, and the first idea is all about blame, specifically the claim that young people are the worst for wasting food. Now I've kept the tone casual in the assimilation, starting with so apparently, which keeps it conversational and a little bit skeptical, a little bit maybe light-hearted, humorous, but it gets serious quite quickly. And for the positive, I show that the accusation doesn't totally fit. We're not throwing away roast dinners, guys. We're just trying to get by with quick food and whatever's left in the fridge. And that was certainly true for me when I was at university, I'll tell you. And the negative is where, again, I push back. I say that blaming teens is far too easy and it doesn't tell the full story. But I also add a subtle solution. We are not completely off the hook. And that line keeps it honest. It acknowledges that we do have a role, even if we are not the only ones responsible. The second idea from text B is about packaging, specifically how plastic helps food last longer and reduces waste in the short term. I've rephrased it in a way that reflects real life. We often grab the, packaged stuff because it lasts, and yeah, it does help, and that is my positive evaluation. But then I shift into the negative. It might be useful now, but in the long term, it's just not a sustainable fix. And I keep that phrasing sharp and simple. Now for the solution, I go beyond just criticizing it. I suggest we need better packaging and smarter options, not just more plastic. So I'm still responding to the idea, but pushing it forward with my own voice. Again, guys, pause if you want to take notes or use this in your own writing. Okay, so here's the final idea from text B, and it's a big one. The fact that a third of food grown never makes it into our cupboards. Who would believe? And not because we wasted it, but because it was the wrong shape or didn't look perfect enough. Now in my version, I've reworded it to keep that same frustration, all that good food gone before we even get a chance to see it. Now, for the positive evaluation, I remind the reader that this shouldn't make us give up. Just because the system's flawed doesn't mean we are powerless. Now, you'll notice I haven't added a negative evaluation here, and that's okay, guys. Not every point needs one, and in this case, the idea itself is already pretty exposing in terms of highlighting something negative, so I focus more on how to respond to it. Now, the solution is simple and direct. Buy the wonky veg, support shops that sell it, and stop judging your carrots by their curves. That line keeps it practical and keeps the tone light, which helps end this section on a strong note. And let's finish with my top tips for directed writing. So number 1, understand the task purpose. Number 2, assimilate, don't copy. Number 3, pick 3 strong ideas from each text. Number 4, use the PNS method where appropriate. Number 5, keep your voice real. Number 6, hook the reader early. Number 7, challenge and persuade. Number 8, make your transition smooth. Number 9, end with purpose. And number 10, plan before you write, which is probably the most important. And that's it, guys. If you've made it this far, first of all, you deserve a medal, but I'll settle for this. Drop wonky veg in the comments so I know you've stuck with me until the very end. Honestly, guys, I hope this has made paper 2 feel a bit more manageable. It really is about planning smart, writing with your own voice, showing that you understand the text, not just copying them, and of course evaluating a range of ideas. Now go back to those top tips, print them out. Good luck, guys, with your paper 2. You've really got this, and remember, food waste might be a serious issue, but writing about it doesn't have to be boring.